and visiting family in Pennsylvania. Then we drove down to see the Capitol 4th and tour the Capitol. I've got my kids here, and they're off looking at the parade right now. They're off having fun, but they've really enjoyed the trip as well. They're in their 20s.
And tell us a bit about independence, American independence.
It's pretty amazing because I love one of the things that Brexit 1776 is what it's been called, because we left, but people left. At that time, England was very authoritarian and very controlling, and that's what people were rebelling against. They were rebelling against that over-control and overreach of government, and they wanted freedom and personal freedom, and it's been a miracle what's happened in this nation. A lot of it has to do with that freedom and having the freedom to pursue your own interests without having the government interfering all the time and trying to control things. And so that's what the independence to me is all about, and that's what our history has been.
So now, can you compare the American independence with, let's say, independence in Africa, you know, certain countries like Zimbabwe, Nigeria, South Africa, and so forth? Is there any way you can compare?
Well, it's been kind of sad, and I hope that it gets better there. I think Christianity has been a strong force in America, and I think Uganda, for example, has turned toward Christianity a lot in the last few years. Ethiopia always has been, and I think that factor is really important. You look at the Muslim countries, for example. I don't mean to deride them in any way, but they're very controlling. I mean, if you live in those countries, your personal freedoms are terrible. I'm not as familiar with some of the African ones, and I love them. I think they're wonderful, and I have friends, I've told you, in several countries, and I want Africa to do well, but I think the moral foundation of Christianity is pretty critical, and it comes down to basic things like you don't rob, you don't steal, you don't cheat, you do your government properly, and it's anti-corruption. It's things like that make a country strong. Countries are good. I believe that we should not have a one-world government, personally. A lot of other people think they have to in order to control everything. I would rather see each country rise to its destiny and its calling. What Zimbabwe, what these other countries, they have a destiny, they have a calling, even though many of them have been through hell, but it's time to come back again.
So now, looking at America right now, people are saying that America is very divided, you know, after Mr. Donald Trump took over as president. Do you agree with that, or maybe people are just saying a lot of things?
Well, we are divided in a lot of ways, and I really think there's abundant evidence that the news media has had a certain point of view, and you know, I'm 66, so I've seen a lot, and I've seen how you can't even, years ago, not long ago, you couldn't admit to being a Christian or the news media would bury you. There's certain things, the political correctness, and there is collusion between the news media and certain political entities. There's no question about it. The corruption is there, it's blatant. So that's what you're seeing, but I think it's clear that the majority of people support President Trump and what he did. I think a lot of the people that consider themselves opposed to him don't really understand what he is doing. I think he's going to be victorious. I think the nation is turning around, the economics are turning, and just like as a thing for Africa as well, we really do need a renaissance economically. And some things have happened in the last 20 or so years, not just Democrats, Republicans too, have kind of sold this country down the river in a lot of ways, so to speak, in that their policies have not been good for America. So we have inner cities that are really terrible, and it's hurting people terribly. Watch the inner cities in America. I predict in the next 4 years, throughout Trump's administration, and I believe into the next one, look at what happens in the inner cities in America and the poor in America. I think they're going to advance. They did not advance during Obama's administration, despite all the rhetoric. So that economics has to come around, and it will.
Well, some will claim that Mr. Trump actually inherited a very good economy from Mr. Obama. Do you agree with that?
Well, if he inherited a very good economy, why are the blacks in America doing much worse than they were 8 years ago? And why is the labor participation rate so low? And why are the food stamps so high? They're sky high like never before. Why is the national debt sky high like never before? No, he had inherited an economy on the brink of bankruptcy. Nobody wants to look at it, but we're near the point where we cannot make enough money to pay for the national debt. That's not a good economy. It looks good on the surface, but it's heading toward disaster.